Hi everyone, Dave here at East Rosebud Fly and Tackle in Billings. Welcome. Today I'm going to tie for you a new pattern I've developed for the shop, calling it the Foam PMD Emerger. PMDs, the emerger and the PMD hatch is so important. Over half of the PMD nymphs do not make it to the adult. They're stillborns, they're cripples, or whatever you want to call them, but the trout feed selectively and very heavily on these PMD emergers. So I'm going to be using a clink hammer style hook. This is a Daiichi 1160 to get the shape that I want. The posts that I make are a combination of some Mcflylon, white Mcflylon, some pearl Krystal Flash. I'm going to be using a Biot for the body. Now, something you should know about Biots, that all bird wings have Biots. These are the primary outside feathers. This is the leading edge of the wing. The Biots come in different lengths. Duck, goose, and turkey are different lengths. You need to select a Biot depending on the size of the hook you're wrapping. There's no sense in putting a turkey Biot on a size 18 hook. You're going to get one wrap, and that's going to be it. The Biot's there to show segmentation, and as I'll show you when I tie this fly, depending on how you tie the Biot in, you can get a ribbed effect or a smooth effect. It's very easy to do. I'm also using orange thread. If you look at the book called Bugwater by Arlene Thompson, he has excellent pictures of PMD males. They have bright, bright orange eyes, and you can see that from underneath. The trout can see that as well. So I figure if I can get it right half the time, I'm ahead of the game. Let's tie this thing. Okay, like I said, this is the Daiichi 1160 clink hammer hook. They also make the 1167, which is just a black nickel finish. To me, this is the best clink hammer hook on the market simply because it has more of the shank up here for you to work with. You can do this on a scud hook, but you just don't have much room for the post. I'm using 10-aught Veevus orange thread, like I said earlier. Orange eyes for the males. Going to start my thread about where I'm going to put my post. This is a good optical reminder for me not to go any further forward until I'm ready. Now for the tail, the Shuck is commonly Antron yarn is used, sparkle emerger yarn. I know I've used a bunch of it, but it just doesn't have the movement of feather. So I'm going to be using some wood duck colored Mallard flank. And since we're only going to be tying in the tips, I'm going to start off with a pretty good bunch of it here, about a hook gap width, maybe a little bit more. Intentionally tie it in long. It's hard to get to back here. One soft wrap, bring it up and over, another wrap, and now I can slide this material just about hook gap in width. I don't want to make this fly appear larger than it is. This is a size 16. Wrap this smoothly all the way up to where I started the thread and take that off. Reorient the hook, wrap over my bare hook, and come back to where I first started. Now the post material I use, like I said earlier, is a combination of white Mcflylon. I tie up plenty of pink as well for high vis. Some pearl Krystal Flash. This ends up being 1/4 of a strand of Mcflylon. I can use this for up to a size 12 hook. For a smaller hook, I take some of this off. Something to remember is that the farther your thread is from the hook, the harder it is to secure your materials. So if I use a big wad of posting material, it's going to be very difficult to get it nice and tight. It's always better to go with less. Take off just a couple of inches here, holding it about in the middle. Now, you need to keep this material on top of the hook shank. If your pinch wrap isn't up to snuff, you can pick this up like this, make sure it's on top, and set it down. It's imperative in this posting method that your thread wraps are tight. Every one of them has to be tight. So I've made 2 wraps, one on top of each other. Now I'm going to swing this wing sideways. The front end's coming towards me, the other end towards you. Taking one wrap diagonally over the top, Grab your wings, pull them hard. What this does is it compresses the post material and allows these thread wraps to slide together. You want these thread wraps to be right on top of each other to minimize the footprint of it. One more wrap going the other way, and now I have the equivalent of 2 X wraps. I'm going to make another pair. As you can see, every time I bring my thread around, I tighten it. I want my thread in front of the wings. Make one more wrap in a conventional manner. This sets the thread up for what I'm going to be doing next. Everything on the post is done counterclockwise. There's a reason for that you'll see in the tie-off. It makes the tie-off very clean and very easy to do. So first I'm going to take 3 wraps around the base of these 2 wings to consolidate them. Reach over the vise, bring it towards you. Again, with every wrap, I'm tightening the thread. Keep it at the base of the post, just as close to the hook as it will allow you. 1, 2, and the third one, come around and reestablish your regular direction. Next, I'm going to tie in some hackle. Now, you can post this wing with thread and then tie in your hackle and post it again, but that's just 2 layers of thread that you really don't need. It's just as easy to post the post and the hackle at the same time. I'm using some Hebert minor hackle. This is a medium grade dun saddle. Next week I'm going to showcase this hackle for you. It's absolutely beautiful hackle in the duns and the brown colors. Has a very, very thin quill, easy to wrap. Hackle density might not be quite up to the regular red label whiting, but it's very close. So I'm picking off enough bare quill. When I tie this in, I want to be able to tie it from the post to behind the eye. Then I'm going to tie the hackle up the post. And I want enough bare quill to where my first wrap on top of the hackle is actually bare quill. That prevents the quill from, or the hackle from flaring up. So you can see I have taken it off asymmetrically. This is going to be the first part of the hackle that hits the post, and I want that to be bare quill. So we tie this in. Make sure that the tip of the butt doesn't occlude the eye. When I come back to the post, stand the post up and make a bit of a biased wrap here, angled wrap. That helps position that against the post. You want the inside, the dull side of the hackle to face the post. So move it wherever you need to. People who tell me that you can't flatten a round thread like Veevus just tells me they don't have much experience with it. It's very easy to flatten Veevus. The smoother your thread wraps are on the post, the smoother your hackle will wrap. I'm going to come up actually one more wrap than I normally would because the foam that I'm using is 1/2 millimeter and I need to account for that. So smoothly wrap up, smoothly wrap back down. When you're at the bottom, come around in a normal manner in front, and then we're going to come behind the post. Now, once again, with the flattened thread, I'm going to build up a little bit of a taper on my body. You don't want to overdo it or you're going to find out you run out of Biot. Come down about 2/3 of the way. Come back up. Flatten the thread again. While that's happening, I'm going to reposition the hook. Like that. Then my final layer, flat thread. Anytime you have an underbody and an overbody, it's imperative that the underbody be smooth. Like laying asphalt on top of a county road that's full of potholes and washboard, your top's going to look exactly the same. So pay attention to the underbody before you put the other on. Now I'm using a turkey Biot simply because the clink hammer has a long shank and the curve. And I always soak my Biots. Put them between a couple layers of paper towel. Let them soak for 10 or 15 minutes. That way they don't crack on you or give you any surprises. Now a Biot has what I call a keel. The edge towards the post is heavy. The edge here is the thin edge. You'll often hear in literature, look for the notch. The notch is right here. When you peel this Biot off of the wing, not cut it, this little tiny notch here means that you're on the soft side of the Biot. I'm going to tie this in where the keel is forward. That way I'm going to have a smooth body. You'll see every wrap covers up that keel. If I tie it the other way with the keel facing back, with every wrap, that keel will stand up as a ridge. Now I like that in mayflies that have very heavy ribbing, like March Browns, Calabatus, green drakes have very heavy ribbing, and I like to use that on the Biot. So I'm going to tie this in by the tip, not quite to where the tail is because this has some width and we don't want to disturb our tail. Capture it with a flat thread like that, and then keep your contour and wrap smoothly right back up to the base of the post. I use a little bit of very thin head cement on the thread base here. I like to use Hackle pliers that have a soft end and a hard end. It helps me to index. It's very easy when you wrap Biots, particularly at first, to twist them, and you end up having them in the wrong orientation. To help prevent that, by using these Hackle pliers, I know when I wrap it, the Hackle pliers have to come up in a certain way to keep this Biot the way I want. Bring it out flat away from you and pull it out. This is what they call a redo. All right. That's okay. There's lots of ways that you can rescue a pattern. Oh, we'll do that again. All right. Now I'm going to wrap this again with the keel edge facing towards the post so that I have a nice smooth body. You'll see this effect with the first wrap. Probably barely see it, but you can see that ridge starting to form there. That's the keel. With every wrap, I want to cover that to get the smooth body effect. And because this is a curved shank, it kind of takes an extra wrap to get around there. That's why I like to use a turkey Biot. Right to the back of the post. A couple of light wraps here. You don't want to tie too tight. You can tear through that Biot. We're going to secure it better here in just a second. One more wrap there. All right. Now we're going to build up a thorax. I'm using UV2 Fine and Dry PMD dubbing. I really like UV2 dubbing. I think the jury is probably going to be out forever about the effects of UV2, but their dubbing is not monochromatic. It has blends of different hues and colors. Nothing in nature is monochromatic, so that's why I like this dubbing. Plus it's very fine, extremely easy to use. I'm going to dub this a little heavier at the top end because I'm going to be tying in my foam up here and a little thinner at the bottom. That's where I'll be tying in the hackle and finishing up the head. I may need to add more dubbing, we'll see. Okay, for the foam I'm using 0.5 millimeter Rainey's crosslink foam. Wapsi also makes what they call the razor foam, which is also 0.5 millimeter. It's a little softer than this. I just prefer this to be a little thicker. I'm just going to nip out a tiny little notch here. What this does is it not only assists in the flotation of the fly, but it assists in the visibility. Put that right there, straddle the post, hold it down on top, and roll your dubbing off of your thumbnail. Make one, make sure that it's still square on top. Second wrap, now I'm going to come in front of the post and capture those two tag ends. What you want to make sure is that you're covering the bottom. That's what the fish see. So rotate this, make sure that the bottom is covered. Now when you're dubbing, if you need more dubbing, don't wait until you're out of dubbing and start all over again. If you have to, unwrap and continue with the dubbing you already have. This is the only way you can keep that dubbing constant in width and form a nice noodle. All right, I'll make that wrap back again. Come underneath, make sure I'm covered. I want to end up the front of the post with about 1.5 inches of dubbing. This is not only going to assist me in tying the hackle down, but it's going to allow me to finish up the head of the fly without having to dub again. Now the hackle must be facing up. That's how I have tied it the way I have. So when you wrap it, it's like an upside down umbrella. Make sure none of your posting material is in there. I like to wrap about 5 wraps. 4 is adequate. 5 looks better, and I think any more than that is just a waste of good hackle. Because remember, this is floating on the bottom hackles. It's not floating on the top hackles. I made 5 wraps. Hold the hackle down and towards you. Lift your thread up. Counterclockwise, we're going to pin this hackle on the post on the bottom. 3 wraps. Come around the front. Make a couple of wraps. That should be enough to finish off the head of the fly. Whip finish so that the orange shows. What did I do with my whip finisher? There it is. Now you'll see the reason for this. By counterclockwise with the hackle, when I tie it off, I'm tying it off in the direction of its wrap. I'm not unwrapping the hackle when I tie it off. Plus, because the hackle is facing up like this, when you do your whip finish, make your revolution slow and you'll see the hackle just kicks out of the way. Much easier than trying to finish it on the post underneath the hackle or with the hackle down. If you get a couple of fibers trapped in there, before you tighten your whip finish, just slip your scissors in there and slide those hackles out. Tighten, cut that off. Now we remove the hackle. I like to trim the post to about gap width or about the same height as what I have hackled. If your post is too long, your fly will land on its side. The post is there for your visibility, that's all. Then I'm going to cut the foam right at the back edge of my hackle wraps and knock off the edges. There's very little in nature that's square, so I'm going to knock that square edge off. And then finally, a little bit of head cement. Head cement, like lacquer, will not stick to the hackle itself. Put a little bit on top there. Just make sure you have very little on your bodkin unless you like cleaning out eyes, and just touch the thread wraps. You're good to go. So there's the Foam PMD Emerger. We will be carrying it in the shop for this year's PMD hatch if you're interested. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.